How to Become Enlightened, Part 2. Stay tuned to learn about the three views of reality. This presentation is part of a series with multiple parts, entitled How to Become Enlightened. And this is Part 2, the three views of reality. Hi, this is Stephen Cockcroft, and thanks for tuning into this presentation. As I said, this is Part 2 in this current series. In Part 1, I introduced the idea of understanding what enlightenment is by contrasting it with unenlightenment. I'll be continuing to take that approach of using the concept of unenlightenment to contrast it with enlightenment as the series moves along. Ultimately, our goal is to understand the nature of enlightenment in order to help us become enlightened in the spiritual or holistic sense of the word enlightenment. But right now, in this part, I'm introducing a subtopic about the three views of reality. In my teachings, I try and avoid unnecessary jargon as much as possible, and I try not to introduce any more concepts than are necessary, whilst at the same time not compromising my message. And for that reason, I considered skipping this teaching on the three views of reality, because it does involve some metaphysical exploration and concepts as well as some jargon. But I found I couldn't really get away with skipping out this particular teaching without things actually becoming more confusing later on in the series. But I'll do my best to keep the subject matter as simple and clear as possible. Metaphysics. As I said in the Part 1 presentation, I believe enlightenment is perceiving reality with clarity and experiencing it authentically. Unenlightenment is experiencing confusion about reality and not fully experiencing it authentically. And these states of being, if you like, are based on certain metaphysical understandings or beliefs about the nature of reality or existence. Metaphysics is the consideration of the nature of existence itself. Meta means beyond, and physics means physical. So metaphysics means consideration of more than just the physical. Science is the study of physical phenomena, but metaphysics considers more than just the physical. It considers the non-physical, consciousness, mind, and so on. Obviously, we can't observe and measure non-physical phenomena like consciousness and mind in the same way we observe and measure physical things, but we can use logic and reason to determine what makes sense regarding metaphysical phenomena and issues. And that is precisely what I'm going to do now. The three main views of reality. So I'm going to do a quick sketch of the main views of reality and look at what makes sense and what doesn't. What is reasonable and what is not. What is a confused view of reality that would lead to unenlightenment, and what is a logical and reasonable view of reality that would represent and lead to enlightenment. The three main metaphysical views of reality or existence are Dualism, Physicalism, and Idealism. There are many more views of reality explored in the likes of academic philosophy. However, I believe they can all be boiled down to the three I just mentioned. To put forth a more thorough argument, I'll also be touching on some other factors to do with how reality can be viewed also. Now, this is not complicated, so please don't be put off by any new terminology or jargon. Grasp this, and you will have a clear understanding of reality that most philosophers don't even have. And I know a lot of philosophers won't like me saying that, but I believe it's true. And that's not because they don't know about this stuff, it's because they don't see the significance of what they know. The first view of reality is dualism. Dualism, of course, means two things working together. In life, we experience two main basic phenomena. They are the physical and the non-physical. I don't need to tell you what the physical is in terms of how we experience it. But what is the non-physical? By the non-physical, I'm talking about things that are often invisible. I'm talking about minds, thoughts, our emotions, our consciousness, that sense or experience of being alive and being aware. Consciousness is essentially the experience of being aware of our own awareness and of the world around us. The essence of the non-physical is really consciousness or internal experience. Dualism says that these two things, the physical and the non-physical, are two separate substances that make up existence. Dualism argues that these two separate substances work together and cooperate with each other and interact to create reality. Now, is dualism a logical or sound metaphysical view of reality? No, it isn't. It's actually illogical and unreasonable. Why is that? It's because the physical and the non-physical are actually literal opposites. Think about that for a moment. See how the words are actually opposites. So as two different phenomena, they can have nothing in common. And because they have nothing in common, there is no basis on which they could reasonably interact with each other, or cooperate together, or work together. There is no similarity between them to base any kind of relationship or interaction. Now, I might need to point out something here. In existence, there are of course opposites that exist together. So I could have a plate of food, and on the same plate, some of the food could be hot and some of the food could be cold, and they can both coexist on the plate. However, hot and cold are not fundamental opposites. And by saying they're not fundamental opposites, I'm saying that they are not the most basic level of reality. On a more basic level of reality, both hotness and coldness relate to physicality, or what is physical. So physicality is more basic than hotness and coldness. And so physicality is what unites hotness and coldness and gives them a foundation on which to exist. But if we return to dualism and check things out, we see that the two opposites of the physical and the non-physical aren't founded on anything else. Dualism claims those two substances are the foundation of all reality. And that's a very important thing to grasp here. So dualism is talking about the two substances of the physical and the non-physical being the foundation of all reality. They're at the bottom, they're the very foundation of everything, according to dualism. So they're saying there isn't anything else more fundamental to bind them together. Instead, with dualism, the physical substance and the non-physical substance, which the non-physical we might also call mind or consciousness, those two fundamental substances, the physical and the non-physical, are the foundation of reality, according to dualism. So they really are absolute opposites that not only have absolutely nothing in common, and so they can't relate or interact, but if they actually did exist as fundamental reality like this, as dualism says they do, they would simply cancel each other out, because they're opposites. They would just contradict each other. So nothing would exist if dualism were correct. And we know something does indeed exist. In short, dualism can't be true. Physicalism. Our next view of reality for consideration is physicalism. Physicalism is the idea that reality is made of only one fundamental substance, and that substance is physicality or matter. Another name for physicalism is materialism, not to be confused with the consumerism meaning of materialism. I'll just clarify that further in fact. There are two meanings of the word materialism. As we know, the everyday meaning is the valuing of acquiring physical possessions. The other meaning is the one we're interested in here. This use of the term materialism is used in academic philosophy and refers to, as I said, the idea that reality is made of only one fundamental substance, and that substance is physicality or matter. Today, however, physicalism seems to be used in place of the word materialism to describe this view that existence is only physical or material. So if physicalism claims reality is only one substance, which is the physical, how does it explain apparent non-physical things like minds and consciousness. Physicalism claims that matter is arranged in such a complex way that it produces physical brains which cause mind or consciousness to come into being. Does that make sense? Well, we have a similar problem here that we found with dualism. The physical and the non-physical are complete opposites in nature. Can you see the problem? How could a physical brain produce a non-physical mind or a non-physical consciousness? How could something physical produce its literal opposite? Physicalism has no real answer to this. The two best answers they produce, and both of them fail by the way, I'll explain now. The first is the illusion argument. Because it's illogical for a physical brain to produce a non-physical consciousness, some physicalists claim that the mind or consciousness is an illusion. In other words, it isn't really non-physical because it isn't actually anything real. It is rather unreal or illusory. Why is this argument invalid? Consider what an illusion is. I see a mirage of water and trees in a desert. It's an illusion. That mirage or illusion is an experience I am having. So an illusion is essentially an experience. And an experience is something that a conscious being has. A conscious being experiences things and has an awareness of those experiences. Physicalism calls minds or consciousnesses illusions. But remember that an illusion is something that is experienced by a conscious being. So physicalism is putting the cart before the horse here, so to speak. I have argued how an illusion is an experience had by a conscious being. So you need the conscious being before the illusion can be experienced. By saying that a conscious being itself, or himself or herself, is an illusion, physicalism is saying that the illusion experience happens without a conscious being. And that is clearly illogical. The experience can't happen independently of or before the experiencer. The experiencer has to exist for the experience of having the illusion can be had. The experiencer or the conscious being can't be the illusion experience that is had. I know that is potentially a little confusing, so I'll try and explain it again a little differently to make sure that you've got it. Firstly, an illusion is something someone experiences, isn't it? So an illusion is an experience that is had by a conscious being. I'll say that again. So an illusion is an experience that is had by a conscious being. So first you have the conscious being, and next that being experiences the illusion. First the consciousness, then it has the experience of an illusion. Consciousness, then it has the illusion experience. But physicalists claim the conscious being or the consciousness is an illusion. So if consciousness is the illusion, who is experiencing that illusion that is consciousness? It doesn't make sense. You can't say consciousness or the conscious being is the illusion because an illusion must be had by consciousness or by the conscious being. To say consciousness or a conscious being is an illusory experience doesn't allow for anyone or anything to have the experience of that illusion. An illusion requires a conscious experiencer. To do away with the conscious experiencer by calling the conscious experiencer an illusion means that the conscious experiencer can't be there to have the illusion. It is what I call broken logic. It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. It is nonsense. That's all it is. It's not an argument or a model of existence at all. It is garbage. What is surprising is that this view of reality dominates the scientific establishment today, and it is, of course, popular in mainstream culture as well. The other argument that physicalism puts forward is that mind or consciousness is simply the same as brain. They are just the same thing. This is actually just a ridiculous thing to claim, as we know that they are entirely different. Sure, mind and brain correlate, they work together somehow, but mind or conscious experience is nothing like how we experience matter. It's nothing like how we know matter to be as we experience it. In fact, upon examination, you find that the two phenomena have the entire exact opposite properties. In fact, the reason empirical science, which studies the physical, can't be used to fully study consciousness or metaphysical issues is precisely because consciousness or mind is entirely unlike physicality as we experience it. So, physicalism will admit that it can't properly study or understand consciousness using physical science methods, but it contradicts itself if it then claims that mind or consciousness is literally the same thing as brain. So to sum up, no matter how you look at things, physicalism is an illogical view of reality that is actually impossible, just like dualism is impossible. Idealism. The third and final view of reality is called idealism. Remember, I said that we only actually experience two main fundamental phenomena as making up existence or reality, the physical and the non-physical. Such a limited number of basic phenomena allows for only a very limited number of possible views of reality. 3 views actually. We've looked at 2 of them. Dualism is the view where the physical and the non-physical both exist as separate substances. This is illogical. Then we looked at physicalism, the idea that reality is only really made of one substance, that is physicality or matter, and consciousness arises from that as an illusion. Once again, that is illogical. The only option left then is opposite to physicalism. That is that all that really exists is the non-physical, or mind, consciousness, experience. This last view is called idealism. The clue is in the name. Idealism begins with the word idea. And idealism claims all that exists is ideas about things rather than things themselves. But let me clarify that. Idealism isn't saying that nothing exists. It is saying that only non-physical things really exist. So consciousness exists, conscious beings exist, minds, thoughts, feelings, sensations, and experience and ideas exist. What doesn't really exist is physical things outside of minds and consciousnesses. So when I look at a building, the building exists in my mind and experience as an idea and as a sensory experience, and it exists in other people's consciousnesses too. However, what doesn't exist, according to idealism, is a building that is separate from people's shared thoughts and consciousnesses. And because of this, we can say only the non-physical exists and not the physical, because with idealism, physical things only exist as non-physical experiences in consciousness. We can actually deduce that idealism is the correct view of reality, because there are only 3 basic options. We've found the other 2 to be impossible. Thus, if idealism is the last option, it must be the correct one. However, I've also just shown why it can also be true because it has only one fundamental substance, and that substance, the non-physical and the physical, is able to arise from that one substance but retain a more literal non-physical nature. In other words, the physical exists not as a separate fundamental substance, but as a non-physical substance in the form of ideas and sensory experiences. The ideas and experiences only exist in conscious experience, not outside of that. So everything is ultimately non-physical. Compare that with physicalism, which says everything is physical and the non-physical consciousness arises from the physical. That's impossible. So why is that not possible if idealism is possible? Well, essentially it's because matter can't experience. Matter doesn't have awareness. Matter can't think. Therefore, matter can't be conscious or be consciousness. and matter can't produce a thinking, experiencing being that is either made of matter or is some kind of illusion. Idealism is the logically sound view of reality, and therefore it makes sense that it is the view of reality that is the foundation of enlightenment, as enlightenment is about perceiving reality with clarity and experiencing it authentically. End of Part 2. In Part 3, I'll be looking at the metaphysical view of unenlightenment. I've shown in Part 2 that enlightenment is founded on a single correct metaphysical view of reality, idealism. So, what about unenlightenment? Is it represented by one metaphysical view as well? Tune into Part 3 and find out the answer. For now, I wish you all the best. This is Stephen Cockcroft, signing out.